And yeah, if you think about it, tara, let's just go, let's just fly. Welcome back to Nihonjin Crack. It's me, your favorite farmer, Rez. First part nito, warrior swords and violence. Second part, so ito na yun, warrior swords and violence, right? Second part, writing as a form of nobility. This thinking exercise that we're about to partake on and why we do it and why we are ba't tayo nasasarapan sa ganung ideas. Random acts of kindness will be the third part. We're getting faster and faster in doing this and trying to record. Kumbaga parang violence ba yun? Yung walang holds barred na pagre-record ng ideas and like just doing it and being generous with the audio, generous with the writing and like recording ideas. Kaya ako gumawa ng channel na ganito kasi ito talaga yung unfiltered, pati yung unang-una nakakapagmura ako pag kailangan ko magmura. Unfiltered meaning walang pumipigil dun sa kung anong pwede kong isulat at ilagay na content. And that's why it's explicit. Explicit content information just means na I'm not trying to say anything else but that. I'm not trying to be implicit yung kabaliktaran ng ano. So kahit baliktarin nyo, para sa akin, para dun sa gumagawa ng content na ganito, if you do like it, then understand that I just wanna make this kind of stuff. And we're gonna end with yung ang taong nag-iisip totoo. Totoo yan. Ang inisip ko lagi yung mga warriors, swords, and violence. A friend of mine, si Jessie, reminded me recently about violence because pinag-usapan namin sa panaming kaibigang kalbo. Sagot daw niya is violence, right? And napaisip ako, even before that, I want to talk about yung samurai spirit and how I liken it to romantic what's the word that I use? Inclination. Ibig sabihin yung ko babay romantic inclination. Hindi man ako sa nagpapatama. Pero lahat tayo merong romantic inclination. And sa paggamit natin ng word na romantic, minsan kahit ako, naligaw na lang din ako dun sa ibig sabihin niya na yung romantic, romansa. Yung ganun ba? Yung romantic, romansa, nakakalimutan natin at minsan hindi natin alam na yung sabihin pala ng romantic, yung Roman era. Meron kasing Mosaic era, Romantic era. Era yung tawag sa kanya, yung Romantic era. So being romantic is likened to that. Wala tayo sa romantic age, guys. Ito tayo sa modern, scientific, whatever you wanna call it, might wanna call it, post-COVID, whatever kind of thing. Andun tayo ngayon. And that's why I've always, when I talk to people, parang minsan, I wanna drive to a point wherein I want them to realize that we're not there. We're here somewhere, that we're at the point of figuring out that one, we're not using swords for violence. We're not warriors. We're not gatherers. We're not swordsmen anymore. Violence, ganyan. And may kita mo to na related to sa pagiging agricultural because no one wants to die when you want things to be living. Kung sarap na sarap ka dun sa passion mo, dun sa ginagawa mong content creation, working, going up the ranks, so to speak, minsan mapapansin mo, and para lang sa sarili ko, diba, ako, to be honest, kaya ako rin iniwan yun, and I wanted to find ways during my early life to be able to not confuse myself into wanting these types of things, like making a killing out of oppression, making a killing out of like being mean and being different, and sa Tagalog lang yung pagiging makamundo ba? Makamundo. Ayoko na yun matagal ko na yung ayaw. So, and I see it in a lot of things. So, ang iniisip ko nga is yung samurai spirit. This is how I explain it in my mind, diba? Yung samurai spirit, Japanese ruling warrior class of killers who you can't, parang honorific yung tawag dun, diba? Yung honorific culture nila influenced the modern world. Yun na yung pinaka-modern warrior class kind of thing that I'm discussing here as a sort of a violent sort of a time in our modern life. Nagsimula yan, and I'll be able to extend it a bit into the next phases. Nagsimula yan nung na-discover ko na sila lang pala yung race na binomba. And that's why I wanted to create this channel, because of things that are like of that nature. If you think about it, of all the races now, only the Japanese people experienced the atomic bomb. And why is that? A lot of people have been asking that, a lot of historians, and may mga sagot na makikita tayo, and it reflects very well now in our history and in our lifestyles. So this is what it's about. One of the biggest things I notice about society today and society before, if we just want to think about it, malaking difference is like caste system. Yung mga nagpa-follow pa rin ng lumang ways of living, most likely somehow trace back sa mga caste system na tinatawag. Caste system yung iba-iba yung klase ng mga tao. And para lang idikit ng masyado sa topic ng video na to, yung samurai kasi, maybe hindi sa atin naturo, but they are the noble warrior class. And what I want to sort of record here is I kind of think of them as ultimate sword fighting, obviously, killers who can write. Because the more you learn about Japanese history, the more you realize it's like it's a modern killing machine sort of story that is tribalistic. And then and Japanese people say this, and the way they present now their history is it's been designed in inumit yung mga mali ng mga samurai. They've always been presented as like what we see in the movies, like honor, ganito ganyan. But if you study, diba, people of honor, people of like magaling skills, or like noble blood. But if you study more, diba, there's also that side, yung oppression. Like anytime they could just kill and get away with it. Anytime they are actually lords also. They're vassals to the lords. Parang second, wala nang mas mataas pa sa kanila eh. Kung normal na tao lang ako, wala nang mas mataas pa sa samurai. Pag nakakita ka ng samurai, yun na yun. Kasi yung mas mataas pa dun, Diyos na eh. Emperor na eh of that state, right? And these guys are writers. I think it's probably Musashi. I read it probably in Musashi's book. Or if you just use logic to just figure out the samurai culture, right? Samurai X, galing din naman ako dyan eh. Mga lahat ng anime na napapanood natin. It's like, these guys are writers, and what I mean is just basically that you're good with the pen, you're good with the sword. Yun nata yun eh. Sinasabi nila yun. If you are good with the pen, then you are also good with the sword. And also vice versa. If you are good with the pen, you can be good with the sword. And if you are good with the sword, you can be good with the pen. And this makes sabihin na natin, apply natin 80-20. 20% of samurai are good writers, and they always win. They always like, of course, iba-iba, diba? They always win. They won up to the point na unify ng samurai ang buong Japan, which was something they thought as si Hideyoshi gumawa nun, diba? Yung something they thought as initially very impossible, and they wrote about it, diba? The winners always write about the winners always write about history. And if you think about Japanese history then, not to be comparing, pero malapit yun eh. Malapit yun, yun eh, mga 1,000 years after the death of Christ lang yun eh. Malapit yun sa scientific age. What I point out here, when you can read and when you can write about this stuff, and I want to put this on record as something na talagang pinag-iisipan ko na pwede kong i-share kahit kailan, is like, yun nga eh, nabomba sila kasi di ko alam, nabomba sila dahil sa America, okay? Let's put that down on the table. During World War II, I'm talking about that. But then, as someone who's like read about their apology, or yung apologizing tone and this disposition ng buong Japan towards other people, so as the Germans, so as the other yung losing faction of World War II, they're apologetic about a lot of stuff. And this is why they're building our trains, they're building our cities. And you should be aware of that's happening, because personal preference na to turn off ako sa mga taong hindi ganun mag-isip. Pero dahil nga nakakapag-isip tayo ng ganun, my frame of mind is like, yun nga, yung nasa video is like, we changed, and we just changed so much recently. Changed. Lahat tayong, I mean, I'm being cosmopolitan about it, pero Asians just changed just recently. And it started with that, a point in time where East met West super recently through war. And nangyari yung kailangan mangyari and we changed. Nagbago tayo talaga. Binago tayo ng mga Amerikano. Binago tayo culturally and everything, you know. You have to be able to trace that back to some points and some cultures. And that's a good point for a writer, you know. And this is how we win history. This is how we sort of apply it daily, you know, being able to think like this. So, in the next part, yung random acts of kindness, di ba? Doon na papunta yan eh. Kasi, paano napunta yun doon, di ba? And then, yung pagiging totoo, pag-usapan ko more. Nung bata ako, napaka-romantic kong tao eh. And when I say that, it's because gusto ko lahat parang ganun, nahuhulog, nanliligaw, medyo sweet, medyo lokohan, to be honest. Ngayon, mas matanda na ako, talagang gusto ko red pill. Red pill, what is the truth behind this thing that I missed out on? Ano yung pinakatotoong kayang expression ng tao, culture, race, or specific mindset ng mga tao na galing sa ganitong part ng mundo versus galing sa ganitong part ng mundo. Talamak ba dito yung isang bagay? Talamak ba dito yung isang bagay? And one of the points I pointed out, first part, is talamak ng patayan nun. Man, Romans and samurai, what they have in common is they kill a lot of other people and they're empirical. Yeah, they're empires in their own right. Wala akong alam na ibang empire na totoo. And I realized this when I was watching Game of Thrones with my family, right? One of the ending battles is like samurai inspired, and then the burning of King's Landing. Diba parang these are all real references. We know in history what these things refer to, right? Napalm, fire, and random acts of kindness. Why did I put this as a third act? It's like I wanted, nahuli ko na kanina, sabihin ko lang, kalmado. Way is like, sometimes we want to be able na palabasin yung maganda nating intent, and for the benefit of the themes that I put in this content, yung maganda bang natural lang sa atin, hindi yung pinapalabas natin na tumutulong tayo sa iba because we think that they are lacking or they are alam mo yun, parang that's just either benevolent or just parang twisted. Yun na lang yung basic na parang ang twisted mo naman mag-isip para maging ganun, diba? And to be honest, I came from that. I came from that kind of thinking na parang dapat solid tayo or tribalistic tayo dahil ganito yung principles ng ganitong grupo namin, kailangan ganito rin, malupit kami, kailangan cool kami at nasisindak si ganito sa amin sa ganyan. But I mean, yeah, now that nabago na yung way ko of lifestyle and also seeing things, I can compare and contrast these kind of like extremes in my life na sort of if we're just talking about random stuff, parang kaya nangyayari yung ganitong culture natin is because of history. Hinahabol tayo ng history ng tinitira nating lugar and lengguwahe. Kasi nagkakaintindihan na yung mga tao from all over the place in all aspects. Content, messaging, language even. And lahi. Isa pa yun, lahi. So, nasabi naman dyan na sa mga panahon ngayon, bilis na talaga. Tapos dumadagdag pa yung kaalaman. So, ano yung sabihin natin nung sa Tagalog na dumadagdag yung kaalaman? Marami nang alam yung mga tao. Marami na silang naiintindihan. Marami na tayong nagagawa. And di pa tayo minsan masaya. So, ako, yung focus ko lang whenever I remember that kinds of stuff is now I do have the luxury of thinking about these things. Meron actually tayong luxury to be free of thinking what I like, what you like. I want to think about ano yung relationship correlation nito sa ganito. May may mga repeats ba yung nangyayari, diba? And I think of this because I wanna be able to understand the past. Para yung modernity natin ngayon, hindi ko na take for granted. Mas na-appreciate ko pa, man, kasi walang taong kayang pumasok sa bahay ko na papatayin lang ako tapos sa slash ako, 'di ba? Walang ganun, 'di ba? Kasi actually kahit mga Hapon ayaw na nila. Wala nang ganun anywhere else na may dalang espada, may dalang baril. Wala nang ganung class of people ngayon. Hindi na tayo tribalistic, right? And I really appreciate that as a matter of fact. Na totoo na wala nang parang violence as much. Where violence is now, I don't know how I could develop that. Pero I think that's kindness, diba? That's because of kindness that huwag ka nang magdala, diba? Huwag ka nang even mag-gesture ng bunot. Walang ganun. Bawal na nga eh, actually. So, that's not so random but also not, the opposite of that is random violence eh. Yung parang cues, right? And being able to talk about those things kasi nangyayari pa rin yung mga ganun, yung parang random, let's say, baliktarin natin, diba? Yung random acts of gestures of sapilitang panggugulo. Wala nang ganun eh, diba? Meron, pero rare times, but compared to before, compared to before, as in I think romantic period, periods before that, nandito na tayo sa 21st century eh, diba? Sobrang layo na. But compared to before, at any point in your life, someone could get hacked like a pig. Someone could get and we get it now, right? Because we're thinking about those stuff now. Masakit yun eh. Una-una masakit, pangalawa makalat. And it's just not logical anymore to be doing those kinds of things. And if it does happen, we shut it out. It's like, it's not real. Because one, it's not the main form of violence now. May mga baril na, may mga eroplano na, may mga unmanned vehicles, may kung ano-anong, not swords, right? Not being a warrior, not being like a makata, not being using the tongue. Hindi ko alam where I'm going out with it. Pero one point ko lang na gusto ko share sa fourth part and final part of this Naga Shizuki crack video is like, napag-isipan na ng tao how to be safe na dito. Sa mundong ito, bawal ng swords. Bawal ng ganito. Bawal ng manakit ng ganito lang. Bawal na pumorma na pwede kang manakit. Diba? Isipin nyo yun. Bawal ng gesture ng gusto kong maging maangas at militarized, weaponized. Bawal yun. Diba? So, and yun lang yung point ko na kung maisip mo yun, I think that's also one of the tenets of martial arts, of modern martial arts. In any martial arts actually. Kasi walang hawak ang martial artist eh. Diba? So that's one of the tenets actually na if you understand that, na hindi mo kailangan ng ganun para maging martial, to fight, to be a fighter, to have a kind of fighting spirit. Hindi mo kailangan ng ganun. And my failure was that I am young and I thought in my naivety, innocence, ganyan na nakala ko Samurai X yung buhay. Alam mo yun, kala ko it's all about revenge and all about covering the floor with, alam mo yun, painting the house down with like, kaya hindi na rin ako, tumigil na rin din ako as in, hindi na rin ako masyadong intense in about those kinds of topics. But it still comes out, it still comes out as like interesting thoughts. So, especially because now that I'm entering sort of public intellectual realm, bilang lang naman pampublikong intellectual lang na I'm at the point of my life, thank God, that I have the luxury of being able to think about and create content about these things, and I'm grateful for that. Say, I could imagine, someone who doesn't is not able to think about violence, someone who's not able to think about yung gulo ba, is someone also na wala dun, diba? Wala dun sa realization that it can spark anytime. But, big but, yung mga modern na tao ngayon, pinag-isipan na nila eh. Ganito yung itsura ng territory para yung mga gugulo sa ibang territory, makita nila, malayo pa lang, syudad yan, diba? May mga walls dyan. Mga ganun bang klaseng bagay na meron pa rin naman hanggang ngayon eh. Except that, it's just that the modernity is like, it's so different. And yet, you know, we trace back, we are still able to look back. Never naubusan ng movies na may samurai na may ganun, diba? That's why I thought about, you know, as we are still inspired by the past, diba? Parang yun, ang sarap lang na ganito yung inaaral ko naman na talaga ever since. And exactly why I love to create content and be able to record about it, because it is done. Tapos na yun eh. Tapos na yung ganun. Meaning, I could mark it as something na never na ulit mangyayari. Never na ulit magkakahatian ng legs and arms. And never na ulit magkakagulo sa mundo. Hindi napapayagan, di ba? Unang-una, may mga natural na law. May mga naintindihan na tayo na boy, bawal na to. Bawal na to for kids, for anyone, for bawal na to. And those are what the things that I've discussed in the earlier parts. And I hope you like this Nagashizuki crack insight, pagmumuni-muni kind of thing. Miss Farmer Rez, balik kayo, and I'll be doing more of this soon. Thanks, guys.